Welcome back to an episode of This Guy Sports Talk. I'm your host, your favorite host, Baldesh Singh, and we've officially had our first Sunday night football game of the year. We had the Rams versus the Bears at SoFi Stadium, and by the way, that stadium looks absolutely insane. I'm not. It actually might be cooler than the Cowboys Stadium, but the Rams actually ended up winning tonight by 20 points, as most of you have already seen. They ended up winning 34-14. The game was actually a lot closer than what the score actually indicated. The Bears defense actually, it wasn't terrible. Honestly, the game was a lot closer than what the score indicated. But they did give up three big plays, which made it look like it was somewhat of a blowout. What was it? They had two post plays. One was to Van Jefferson for 67 yards, where he ended up falling, and I guess the Bears defensive backs, their secondary, thought this was college football because none of them tagged him when he was on the ground, and he literally got up and ran into the end zone. And the other one was a 56-yard pass to Cooper Kupp that ended up going for a touchdown as well. And there was a 37-yard pass to Tyler Higbee, which was a corner route. But outside of that, if you just, they obviously had a lot of offensive plays, but if you just take three of those out, the game was actually a lot closer, like I said, than what the score actually indicated. Outside of those two big post plays that got blown out of proportion in the first half, if you were to take those two plays out, you're actually looking at the score Chicago 14 and the Rams 13 at halftime. So, like I said, the defense wasn't terrible for the Bears, but they just made a lot of rookie mistakes and gave up a lot of big plays along the way. The Rams did a few good things and a couple bad things. The Bears did a couple good things, but a lot of bad things. But just to start off, the LA Rams, one, SoFi Stadium is freaking insane. I definitely plan on going back. I think it was this past year I actually ended up going to the USC Stadium to go watch the Niners and Rams play. I'm sorry, no, it was 2 years ago. I actually ended up going back to watch the Niners and Rams play, and the Niners actually ended up winning that game. But next time I do go back to LA, I definitely plan on catching the Niners game and checking out SoFi Stadium. So, but just to start with the Rams, their fan base looks freaking electric. At first, I was a little suspect about how LA was going to treat two different LA teams, but the fact that I think they have this freaking crazy stadium, they got a franchise quarterback in Matthew Stafford, they got Sean McVay, they got big personalities like Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. I think that draws a lot of people in LA to that specific team more than they would be drawn to the LA Chargers. But when Matthew Stafford hit that first 67-yard post route to Van Jefferson, man, the freaking stadium was electric. I mean, what was it? Yeah, it was Jalen Ramsey. He was freaking out. Aaron Donald was doing this, like, ooh, this guy is on fire. And you could tell Sean McVay looks at Matt Stafford the way Drake looks at athletes. Like, Sean McVay is absolutely in love with Matthew Stafford. And, it's just I don't know. I thought it was a pretty cool opening. I think Stafford went 20 for 26, over 300 yards and three touchdowns. But I had a feeling on the way McVay was looking at the way McVay was looking at Matthew Stafford, because the way he treated him towards the end of the game, where they literally could have ran the ball with Darrell Henderson, which would have helped me out in fantasy football, but instead they literally threw the ball at the 2-yard line, which we remember what happened with Russell Wilson in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. But the fact that he's so obsessed, which might be a downfall for them in the future, they should have just ran the ball. But anyways, he got three touchdowns. He went 20 for 26, went over 300 yards, had freaking huge plays left and right. But yeah, the Rams got a little bit of a swagger now. I mean, they got the best cornerback in the league with Jalen Ramsey. You got the best defensive tackle, possibly their best defensive player in the league, Aaron Donald. You got Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee, which he's not having to share reps with Gerald Everett anymore because he's with the Seattle Seahawks. And then Darrell Henderson kind of came on a little bit towards the end of the game, but not so much throughout the whole game. But the Rams looked really good. I don't have too many things to complain about, but there were a couple things that I noticed that. Oh, sorry about that. Probably should put my cell phone on vibrate. But there were a couple things that the Rams weren't able to do throughout the game that caused a little bit of a concern for me. The Rams did not have the ability to run the ball. And if you end up turning this Rams offense, which they did end up losing Cam Akers, if you end up turning this Rams offense into a one-dimensional offense, which is just passing the ball left and right, you're eventually going to get exposed, and you're not going to make it very far in the playoffs. Now, will this team make it to the playoffs? I certainly believe they will. But I've never seen a one-dimensional team ever win a Super Bowl. So if they have any aspirations of doing what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did, which was play in the Super Bowl at your home stadium, you're going to have to figure out how to run the ball. And that's something that they really did struggle with. I think at one point in time, Darrell Henderson threw like 2.5 quarters had like 6 rushing yards. So they're going to have to figure something out because just throwing the ball around left and right, you're eventually going to get exposed. And Stafford's going to end up playing like he played in Detroit. Another thing, Matt Stafford, which he was phenomenal, not too many complaints, but he got wrecked. I think it was towards the end of the second quarter where Akeem Hicks ended up nailing him with like 2 other Bears defensive linemen. He really struggled, with moving within the pocket, and I think where the league is heading now, with a bunch of mobile quarterbacks like Russell Wilson, you got Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, even a little bit of Patrick Mahomes, you're going to have to, figure out how to, get a little bit more mobile, because if you can't run the ball and you just plan on passing the whole time, you're going to have to, I don't know, it could get very ugly. So, but outside of that, the Rams, they played pretty well. Not too many things to complain about. But like I said, outside of those 3 big plays, I just don't feel like they really solidified that win. It was a very close game in my eyes. Hopefully everybody was watching the same game as well. But no, the Rams, the Bears lost that game. I feel like more than the Rams won that game. But speaking of the Bears, David Montgomery, if I had to give an MVP to anybody on offense, it'd definitely be David Montgomery. He definitely picked up right where he left off towards the end of last year. I believe the last 5 or 6 games, he ended up being like a top 3 rusher. And literally, he ran over 100 yards on a really good Rams defense. The defense still has it. Like I said, I keep bringing up the same point, but they just gave up those 3 big plays. And if they wouldn't have gave up 2 of those post routes in the first half, which went for 67 yards and 56 yards to Van Jefferson and Cooper Kupp for a touchdown, the Chicago Bears would actually be winning at halftime 14-13. So outside of those mental errors, I think the Bears defense is still pretty decent. They're not the same what they were like a couple years ago, but it's definitely good enough to win playoff games. If you got a decent quarterback, which they should definitely put Justin Fields in. Also, they played really good red zone defense, except for the fourth quarter because they actually took all their starters out because the game was definitely over. But they gave up a lot of the big plays, but not so much of the short intermediate plays. I think they did a very good job with that. Now, a lot of the bad things, like I said, they gave up a lot of big plays. Their offense was very predictable. It was a lot of checkdowns, a lot of Andy Dalton 5 to 6 yard passes, just running the ball. It was very West Coast offense, and a lot of, hey, our offensive line isn't good enough to give Andy Dalton time to wind up his arm to actually throw the ball down the field. So the offense was definitely very predictable. Jason Peters, man, that dude looked old and washed. He's playing his 18th year. Definitely a Philadelphia Eagles legend, but I think he should definitely hang up those cleats. Also Matt Nagy with your fourth down calls. Why did I stutter like Joe Biden? But your 4th down calls are absolutely terrible. You started off 0-2. You killed the momentum. You started off the first drive fantastically with a freaking crazy ass kick return. and then David Montgomery rips off a 41-yard run, and then, of course, Andy Dalton throws a pick in the end zone. But I feel like they definitely have some great momentum, but they just made really bad mistakes at the worst possible time. But I really think if they put Justin Fields in there, I mean, he ran for, I think it was like a 5-yard touchdown. I really believe if they actually put him in there, maybe not next week, but maybe the week after, or until Matt Nagy's like, if I don't put Justin Fields in, I'm probably going to lose my job. If they don't do that soon enough, this season might be a lost season for Chicago. So overall, I actually had a great time watching the game. Like I said, the Rams, they played great. Stafford, like I said, went 20 for 26 over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Had big plays. That's a great way to open up your season at SoFi Stadium in front of your electric fan base. And I'm really excited to see, what the Bears and Rams do the rest of the year. So, yeah, if you have any comments on anything I just said, definitely drop your comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you for tuning into this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next episode of This Guy's Sports Talk.